what does success mean to you?
Okay, next up on the show, we've got Simon Alexander Ong, who's a life coach and business strategist and a motivational speaker. Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you for having me on this conversation, this sort of show of yours. I'm a life coach, business strategist, and motivational speaker. Haven't always done that, however, that began, a number of years ago, following actually the last crisis we had, which was a global financial crisis of 2008. I started in the financial industry a year before, probably not the best time given crisis kicking off in '08. And even worse when that company was called Lehman Brothers, which went bankrupt in September 2008. So it's quite interesting how that was the catalyst for me exploring what I wanted to do long term. And now that we're speaking, we're in the midst of another crisis here.
So just break it down for people who aren't quite sure exactly what you do. Just tell us, what's what do you do day to day?
Sure. So day to day can look different, but if I look at the high level, the coaching part is involved in me working privately one-to-one with people, typically those in leadership positions. So whether you are running a business, whether you are looking to upgrade some area of your life, or you're just looking to pursue your passion in life. They work with me privately to help guide them forward, to help bring out the best in themselves and so they can fulfill their potential. So that's where the coaching comes in. It blends my life coaching background, how I trained, with my love and interest in entrepreneurship and business development. Other stuff I do, as you said, is speaking. It's speaking at conferences, organizations, at events. Obviously, not a lot of that going on at the moment, but fortunately, some of these events have still continued, albeit virtually. So it's good to see they've adapted to the changing circumstances.
So in terms of where we are at the moment, just a bit more digging into your background, is this something you've always had sort of building up and you wanted to do when you were young, or did something tick and hit you and think, I want to give that a go?
Yeah, not really. So I think it's probably the latter from what you said just now, Casey, is that it's something that came later and it was a process of curiosity following. But up until I started in the financial industry in 2007, life for me was fairly linear. So what I mean by that, and it's very typical of Chinese parents and Chinese families. You go to school, you want to be top of the class, you get good grades, you go to a good university, you try and get a well-paying job in an industry that only includes banker, lawyer, doctor, or accountant. So that was what I mean by life was very linear up until that point. And so I didn't really give much thought to what I really wanted to do. I felt I was pursuing what was happiness to me, but I didn't know that entire time that I was following someone else's definition of success or fulfillment until the sort of last crisis, the financial crisis, happened. And that was a very volatile period for me. There was a moment where I was out of a job for 10 months. And in that moment, I entered a deep period of self-reflection. And it was in that period I had the opportunity to reflect on the question of what I really wanted to do. What was the sort of impact I wanted to have? And that was really the beginnings, or the seeds, if you will, behind me exploring what I now do today. And it was always taking those small steps to follow what I was curious about, try things, explore, learn, and see where things would go from there. And it brings to mind now as I speak to you, there's this quote by Jim Rohn that says, formal education will make you a living, self-education can make you a fortune. And that's what I embarked on, is to self-educate, to embrace that idea of being an eternal student and to see where this could go.
Absolutely lovely. And I follow you online and I love your analogies. I think they're so easy to picture. You really do paint it quite nicely and simply as well, which is lovely. So just digging into a bit in terms of like being real with people now and how they might feel. Potentially, the people are not used to being locked up indoors for this long. So mentally that will have a big impact. And you could have someone who's very used to working in a routine and that's been ripped from underneath them. Like, what are you finding that you're having to adapt the way that you work to help people sort of maintain that level of awesomeness?
Definitely. I think adapting is a key word, what you just said there, Casey. It's not just me helping my clients to adapt, but I've also had to adapt both personally and professionally. And just to illustrate the importance of adaptation, Charles Darwin said in his book, The Theory of Evolution, that it is not the strongest or most intelligent that will survive, but the most adaptable. Now, we've seen in businesses, you've seen Blockbuster go bankrupt, yet Netflix soar ahead. You've seen BlackBerry lose headway to the likes of Apple, who never started the mobile phone, but have dominated that sector now. And so it's our ability to adapt. Just to give you examples of how I've adapted and how I've helped clients to adapt. So personally, I love going to the gym. I love working out every day. But unfortunately, with gyms closed and even outdoor gyms now closed because they want people to stay at home, I've had to personally adapt to home workouts, to running outside, getting my one form of exercise a day outside. So I've had to adapt there. And professionally, I've had to adapt because clients aren't able to meet in person. So now we are doing coaching virtually. I focus a lot more on my Facebook group, where I go live every week to answer people's questions, to interview people, and also guiding my clients onto how to adapt, because it's important to realize that events at the end of the day are just that. They are only events. What allows us to take action or no action is how we interpret those events and how we see them to bring meaning to that event. That's why the same event can be seen as a problem for some, but an opportunity for others. Sad for some, happy for others. The worst time for some, but the best time for others. And so it's important to realize what we focus on grows. So what are we choosing to focus on now? Yes, there are things we've never experienced. We are quarantined inside. We've lost a lot of liberties. But I tell you what, it's made me infinitely more grateful to see full shelves in supermarkets, catching up with friends over coffee. It's made me feel more grateful for that when lockdown finally gets lifted. And if anything, that should bring us all together more. We should use this time in a productive way. Just reflect on the moments where we said to ourselves, I wish I had more time at home. I wish I could not go on the commute into work because it's so packed. I wish I had the time to pursue those hobbies. I wish I had time to follow through with all those things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
This is the moment.
True. Yeah. It's looking at living in the now rather than the worry of the future or the regret of the past.
Totally.
It's just being completely present, isn't it? And that really does help. I've had the exact same conversation with a family friend. It's like, I've never spoke to so many of my friends in such a short space of time. And I love it. I don't know why I don't do it enough. And you can do so much from home. You can really, I think this is an opportunity to recraft who you are as a person, to help yourself grow and get ahead of the people who potentially are just riding this out.
Totally. And that's why I think what can help us make more productive use of this time, because this is new, so we do have to adapt. But adapting is not so bad. Every next level of our life demands a different us. So maybe it's a good thing that we have to adapt. So we build that resilience. So when we do encounter obstacles after this, we have the mental resilience to navigate those uncharted territories. So questions can be powerful. I always say, if you want better answers, ask better questions. So one of the ways we can begin that each day, especially when we think about structure and routine, and I know that was one of the questions someone asked, because I saw it in your stories earlier, Casey, about how do we manage structure and routine in each day. Well, when you get structure and routine taken away from you, it becomes much more important to have the discipline to understand how to build structure for your day. And that might change day to day as things do evolve. Schools only shut down last week, so before then you didn't have to account for children if you were running a family. So it's important to begin each day to reflect on how will you know today will have been a productive day. And notice I said today, not tomorrow, not next month, not next week, but today. Because no one really knows where things are going to be in the next week, next month. I mean, things are moving very fast, and we have no idea how things will change. And so focus what you can control, which is now. When we focus on what we can't control, we'll become paralyzed by overthinking and worry and anxiety. But when we focus on what we can control in the next 24 hours, we become empowered, we become energized to take action. And that's a great question to start the day. But when we look at the period we're in now, where we are at home, where we have time, where we have these moments we had never anticipated, a powerful question to reflect on is, how can you use these moments as the defining moments that will become the best time of your life, the most productive time of your life?
That's absolutely amazing. This is going to be a long interview, I can tell. But it's so nice because I've used this as a potentially an excuse in the past. I'm not going to lie. Is I always used to say I'm terrible with routines because I have very unusual working hours. Sometimes I'll have a morning job. Sometimes I have an evening job. Sometimes I have 2 in one day, and I try to fit in the normal life around those minutes. But now I've almost been blessed with an opportunity to try and figure out a routine that I can do daily. And I don't know if that's how you work in terms of, have you got a strict, you're up at 7 a.m., you're out working out by 8, you're eating. And is that something you work on from a base level before you do anything?
So I would say I approach it differently. I don't have sort of like a strict, I'm up at this time and I have to do this by that time. Because I understand, similar to your routine, Casey, that days can change. Days can be different. Yeah. So just to give an example, I might have a meeting early in the morning. So obviously I can't do my sort of wake up at this time and go gym or do a workout. But the way I do it, and it could be something that the listeners can embrace better than being too rigid, because again, all of us will have different lifestyle circumstances. Some will have families. Some will be on their own. Some will have elderly parents or relatives they're looking after. So I think a more manageable way to create structure in your day is around what I call non-negotiables. What are your daily non-negotiables? Now, it doesn't matter what time you do it, but the fact is it's a non-negotiable. You have to have done it by the end of the day. So for me, a daily non-negotiable will be exercise. Now, most mornings I would do exercise, and there'll be some mornings where I can't, so I'll do it in the afternoon. Or if I can't do it in the afternoon, I'll do it early evening, but it's a non-negotiable. I do some form of exercise every day. Another non-negotiable might be reaching out to friends, just wishing them happy birthday. If it pops up on my notifications that it's someone's birthday, I'll drop them a voice note, wish them a happy birthday, and other stuff. So it's really working out what are your daily non-negotiables. And a great way to reflect on what those could be, because each of us will have different choices, what is a non-negotiable for us, is to reflect on what are you working towards. Now, once you've got an idea of what you're working towards, is to self-reflect. If I took my average day right now with the choices and habits I have every day, and I repeat that every day for the next 3 years, would I be closer to where I want to be or not? If not, what must change? And that begins to focus your attention on what those non-negotiables must be. Not should be, but must be. And again, that will come in different forms. For me, it was exercise. For me, it was reaching out to people. For me, it was writing, journaling, gratitudes, focusing on the most important task on my to-do list. Even if I do nothing else on my to-do list, if I just do one thing and it's the most important, that's going to move me a lot further ahead than if I do 25 things that are minor, but don't really move the needle in my progress.
So it's better to be productive rather than busy.
Indeed. And that's why there's a big difference between effectiveness and efficiency. You can be efficient with the work you're doing, but if it's not working on the right things, then where's that really going to take you? Effectiveness is knowing that you're working on the right things. Those things that are really going to move the needle, that are really going to make the difference in moving you from where you are to where you would like to be.
It's brilliant. It's so lovely. And one of the other questions we had is, what do you do to motivate yourself if you ever get to a point of confusion or you get stuck?
Totally, and that's fine. We all do, and I think when we go through these feelings of whether it's frustration or worry or feeling like we are not doing enough, and that's completely fine. First, is just accept that it's a normal human feeling. The second is to reflect, well, how can you minimize the length that you're there? Because we're all going to go through that. We're not robots, and we're not going to have an optimal emotional state 100% every day. We would just burn out from trying to maintain that. But what we can do is to create an environment around us that makes it impossible not to succeed, that makes it impossible not to be at our most energized self most of the time. That's the most important. So what I mean by that, it is everything from what we read. What are you watching? What are you listening to? Who are you speaking to the most? That is all about environment, and that can also be our physical environment. How is the organization of your room that you're in? Now, if it's a cluttered mess, then I've no doubt that you're going to be feeling more stressful when you approach your work than if you have it very nicely tidied up, organized, and very, as I would say, Marie Kondoed. Marie Kondo having written the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Because what that does is, supposedly, according to psychologists, a organized and tidy environment that you work in creates an organized and tidy mind, because it allows us to think clearer.
I completely agree with that. It makes sense. That's one of the things I've done this week, is empty my wardrobe out and start again.
Yeah.
And it has. I wake up, because that's the initial thing. I'm in my bedroom and I wake up and I look around, and instead of having like half things that don't quite fit in there, I've now got all of my items in the right place. And I feel like I've got up on the right foot and I'm ready to go, rather than getting up, which I have done in the past, and I'll sort of get to bed and I'll sort of just throw stuff on the floor. I then wake up the next day and I feel like in a clean, natural, organized space, and my mind already feels like I'm on your side. Everything looks nice. I feel better. And I find that those immediate things you do in the morning can sometimes set your projectile on a good day.
Totally. And I think that's why environment is so important. Another one that's coming to my mind case in terms of managing our motivation, managing our sort of energy there, is visualization, the activity of visualization. What that is, in essence, is regularly reminding ourselves about why we're doing what we're doing. What is it we're working towards? And now, if we got clarity as to what that purpose is, what that vision we're working towards is, and we remind ourselves daily of what it is in as vivid a detail as we can, if every area of your life, the most important areas of your life, would be a 10 out of 10, what would that look like? What would that feel like? What would you be doing? Who would you be doing it with? What would you be saying to yourself? Really immersing yourself in that visually. Now, you can do that closing your eyes. You can do that through vision boards, whatever works for you. But the process of visualization connects the conscious with the subconscious. It shows us what's possible. It shows us it is possible. And when we're more connected to that, we become more energized and motivated to do the work that will get us there. And that's how we can maintain our energies. Regularly remind ourselves, what is it we're working towards? And I think that is important. Often we can lose track. We can deviate, and it's fine. Again, we're human at the end of the day, but it's understanding, how do we bring ourselves back on track? How do we bring ourselves back on track? Remind us of the significance of what we're doing, the impact that it's going to have.
Lovely. And one last question I wanted to ask is, some people might be looking at this and think, oh, that's, it's right for them. They've got everything in line. Their life's perfect. What happens if someone's in a negative mindset and they cannot snap out of it? Have you got any advice for people to get that first step, or to move that first chess piece forward? How would you advise and help someone there?
So if someone is feeling negative, if someone's looking to, shift towards a positive, I would say the power of gratitude and perspective would change that immediately. So before I jump into that, one thing to keep in mind is that you live in the feeling of your thinking. Moment to moment to moment, you are living in the feeling of your thinking. But that also gives you a power that few appreciate, is that at any given moment, you have the power to change one thought over another. You can choose a different thought. When you really appreciate that, you'll understand how you can bend your reality. Now, there's a great Taoist story about a farmer in a village, and the farmer's horse escapes the village, and the neighbors say to the farmer, "What bad luck?" And the farmer says, "Maybe, maybe not." The next day, the horse comes back with 3 wild horses, and the villagers say, "What great luck, such a fortunate man." And the farmer says, "Maybe, maybe not." The next morning, the farmer's son tends to the horses, and one of the horses kicks the farmer's son breaking his leg in the process. And the villager said, what bad luck? Farmer says, maybe, maybe not. On the final day, the army comes to the village, recruiting all able-bodied men to fight in the war, except the farmer's son, because of his injury. And the villager said, what great luck. And again, the farmer says, maybe, maybe not. So that shows the power we have to choose our thoughts, to choose one thought over another. Now, where gratitude comes in, where perspective comes in, is that your negativity and positivity is all relative. So if you're feeling negative right now, what I would like you to do, if you're listening in this moment, is just to close your eyes and to reflect on these three things. Number one, imagine you don't have sight. Second, imagine you only had one arm. Notice how that would feel. And third, imagine you had no access to food and had to survive day to day by whatever was left behind, whatever you had to scrap for, and you had to hunt down a place for shelter because it wasn't granted to you. Now, how do you feel in this moment? You may be feeling a sense of gratitude. You may be feeling a sense of fortune, or the fact that maybe you don't have it bad after all. And this is the power of perspective. The power of perspective means actually we often take things for granted until we lose them. And if you really want to challenge yourself to move from negative to positive right now, and you are up for a challenge, here's what I suggest you do. Get a pen and paper. Write down one person that you can be most grateful for that has had some influence on where you are today, a positive influence on where you are today. And when you've written the name of that person down, write down why you chose that person. It may be a sentence, it may be a couple of sentences. Now here's the challenge for you. Once you've done those first 2 points, pick up the phone, call that person, and read out exactly what you wrote. And then after, notice how different you feel.
Absolutely incredible. I'm smiling because I was doing it in my head, and I know exactly who I was going to call. That is absolutely amazing. What like wonderful advice, and I'm so grateful that you gave up your time to come on the show as well. Absolutely incredible. One final thing, I was going to go into a few other bits, but I think you've given so much to so many now. That's absolutely incredible. If you were to nominate someone else to come on here, who would you like to see?
I'll have to get back to you, Casey, in terms of a name, but I think someone that would be great, given we just went into schools locking down last week. It's probably how families can navigate these very uncertain times, because families are so used to having childcare or having their children at school, that to have them at home 24/7 now, for a lot of people, it's going to be very hard. You know, how do we keep our children occupied when they're home 24/7? So someone who can talk a bit about that, I think would be very helpful for those who do have families.
Wonderful. Excellent. And I'll put all of your social channels and where to follow you and how to find out how to get hold of you, because I'm sure people listening to this will absolutely benefit 100%. It was absolutely, I'm just smiling. I'm just so happy. I'm still taking it all in. It's absolutely excellent. So guys, just to summarize then, it's your choice whether to feel how you feel, and you really can change every thought that you have. Simon, you'll probably be much better at rounding up and summarizing what you've just done there. But I just think that if you're listening to this, you are really present right now, and you've got the ability to change your thought pattern instantly. And just thank you so much, Simon, for giving up your time today.
My pleasure, Casey, and thank you very much for having me on. And yeah, so maybe a quick takeaway for the listeners is, remember this: life truly begins for you when you take responsibility for where you are and where you're going. Take responsibility, no blaming, no accusing. Take full responsibility, and you'll realize there's far more things in your control than you've given credit for.
Amazing. Excellent. I'm round of applause. Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much, Simon.